contagious anymore. I finished my 4 rounds.
I have.
I know, why forgetting that?
Thank you,
You
John.
looked so well when I saw you last Thursday, and then you said over the weekend that you weren't feeling it. Take it well.
We're live.
Okay, motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second. Lynn.
Oh, who's the board secretary?
Me.
Oh,
Read the.
Do you have to read that?
Heather
over?
Blake.
Yep.
And then, Dr. Gill, can you read the Open Public Meeting Act?
Yes. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 15th, 2021, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. Written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were faxed to the Courier Post and mailed to the Retrospect newspaper.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Okay, we're gonna open up the interviews and.
We do public comment first. You have to have public comment because it's a public meeting.
Okay. So,
Just saying, where you open it up to public.
we'll open it up
Do you
to
want to
public
read this
comment.
statement?
I didn't bring the statement, but that's okay. So if anyone would like to make a comment,
Just seeing as there's nobody here, you can probably.
seeing as there's nobody here, we will move on to the interviews.
We don't
Do you want to call, John, thank you. Sounds good.
My fingers to turn pages, and I can't do that with the rest.
Okay, our first interview is Meg Hallenworth.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Meg.
I get the fancy seat here.
Yeah, makes
Oh,
it
yeah.
comfortable.
Very official.
I know, and it can sometimes feel odd to like look at all of us, but it's just a casual
Terrific.
interview, casual conversation.
Excellent. Lovely after like 22 months of nonstop virtual Zoom and Google Meet and Teams conversations. We're all pretty good at this.
Yeah, exactly.
And today's your
Imagine
anniversary?
it's all in boxes.
And today is my anniversary.
Congratulations.
Happy anniversary. Thank you so much. 15 years went by pretty quick.
That's a good thing that it went by fast.
Indeed.
All right.
Okay, are you ready?
I am.
All right. We've read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Can you please restate your reasons and desires to serve on the Haddonfield School District's Board of Education?
Sure, I'd love to. And thank you again, everybody, for a chance to connect with you this evening. I have been a proud Haddonfield resident with my family for 10 or 11 years now. And I feel kind of drawn to get into the mix in terms of our school board operations. I, throughout my career and my personal life, have been, I would say, an advocate for change and for progress. And so in various leadership roles in all of the different committees and nonprofits and other boards that I'm involved in, that's something that's really important to me. How do we bring people together, really build consensus while addressing complicated issues and figuring out how to improve what I would argue is a phenomenal school district, but all even wonderful things have room for improvement, right? So I think this is a really terrific opportunity. I think I have the right types of skills in terms of communications and leadership and consensus building. And I hope that I can be a really strong attribute to an already strong team.
Great. Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm not used to masking. I work exclusively from home. I don't know how you guys do this. So I am very active in a number of different groups and committees. I guess I'd begin with the fact that for the last 8 years, I have led the Alumni Association for Moorestown Friends School, which is where I went to high school. And I remain really closely connected with that community. I am the social media lead for our South Jersey Moms Demand Action group. So I know from that line of work also. Moms Demand Action, of course, is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to promoting gun sense, and that is something that I'm really passionate about. I also, in town, am closely connected with the Haddonfield Anti-Racist Coalition, another critical area that I think we have room to improve. And I think that that is a really great opportunity to engage with folks who fundamentally agree change is needed, but also recognize that change is hard and it's uncomfortable, and you need to figure out how to engage with people without being, I guess, aggressive, right? In order to leverage the common ground. So those are some of the organizations I'm involved with.
Thank you.
And the PTA for Spring Social at Central School.
How do you define transparency? And do you feel that the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example. If not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
Sure. So I would say, knowing several of the awesome board members sitting here in the room, one theme that I have heard in all of the conversations is the commitment to transparency, which I think is laudable. That's not always easy, right? In a situation where you're dealing with sensitive topics and personal challenges, individuals may be knocking on your door, raising concerns. So I think that commitment to transparency is really critical. Certainly, as I've dug around on your website, I see very clear, concise documentation, information that is, paraphrased or transcribed. It really helps people to understand the topics addressed. I would say, I think everyone would understand that not every topic discussed will be documented, right? You folks have your kind of more formal closed group sessions too, which is appropriate. So from where I'm sitting, it appears that transparency is something this group holds as a really critical area of your work. And I would propose that, leaders always need to be cognizant of the need for transparency and get the balance right, which is not always easy. That's something I do a lot for work.
I'm sorry, just gonna stop for just 1 second.
Sure.
I just want to say, this is very difficult because you can't see like a
smile.
smile. Say that. Smiling like that. It's one you got.
That's pretty good. That's much more.
Yeah, this is Botox, it doesn't change.
No, I
Yes,
appreciate
we
that.
should have worn either the
Yeah,
smile or,
yeah.
oh, you have a smile written.
Yeah, I just can't see it.
Okay, please provide your experience working as a member of a board or similar group and detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team.
Sure. So I would say the prime example that springs to mind is from about, how long ago? About 11 years ago, right before I moved to Haddonfield. I was the president of a board for the Summit Children's Program in Mount Airy. We used to live in Mount Airy area. And that was a really exciting time. I was roped into it, I would say, by some of the teachers and administrators and some fellow parents who recognized that this was a phenomenal preschool program, essentially, that my oldest daughter, who's now a middle schooler, was in. And they were going through a big period of transition. They were looking for new leadership. They had just gone through an extensive process to hire a new executive director who left very abruptly and in kind of odd circumstances. So I was pulled in, I would say, to do a lot of problem solving and troubleshooting. we quickly dove in doing what I think is always really critical, which is, I would say, kind of research, right? Talking with folks who are parents, who are teachers, understanding what's working well and what is going wrong. In order to address any challenge, you really need to have to kind of go deep, do your homework and understand what's going on. So that was a lot of the focus that I brought as a leader in that space. So I recruited a really strong team of other parents, as well as some members of our administrative team at the school, and we were able to launch a really robust new recruitment process and land an ED who is still there to this day. I'm still connected with the program. It was a lot of work, but I made really great connections with folks. So in terms of how I can help supplement this strong team, I would say, as I look at your different subcommittees, for example, I'm really interested in kind of the policy piece and the communications areas. I would say those are strengths that I bring and areas that I excel in. That does not mean that I'm not interested in curriculum committee, or I would say, please don't put me on the finance committee. I'll try, but that is less of a strength, we'll say. And I think that I would say, in terms of my background and my leadership roles at United Healthcare, where I've been for 15 years, unbelievably, since graduate school, I am very focused on consensus building and relationships. And in my 15 years at UHC, which is a challenging Fortune 5 to navigate, I've come to the realization that if you can build strong relationships with people, inevitably you can land on the right solution, which is not always the solution that you came up with, right? But it's the art of negotiation.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think I said I didn't want to be on finance on my, it sounds scarier than it is.
Okay.
And you learn. Okay, here's a scenario for you. Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with the teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? And what if the individual insists on an answer?
Great question. And I know that scenarios like this do emerge probably all the time as folks are at Acme or Redmond or wherever you shop. I would say one thing that became very apparent both in my discussions with all of you smart people and in reading through documents on the New Jersey's SBA site is that it's really critical a board member kind of knows their role. And so the inappropriate answer is, no problem, I'll take care of that. We'll get rid of Mr. So-and-so, clearly, and I'm being tongue-in-cheek here. The right answer, I think, in that interaction is to help people understand what the process looks like, what the appropriate, I would say, chain of command or process is, so that they can go through the right channel to have the needs addressed. Mr. Klaus and his esteemed colleagues are those who operate the school. The board is there to help support policy development and has a number of critical responsibilities, which are not resolving individual complaints or concerns.
Great. Thank you. Okay, as a board member, you are representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittee meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours, so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues meeting this commitment?
Yeah, great question. And that was certainly something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. When I expressed my interest in becoming a Board of Ed member, my husband, to his credit, said, Meg, you're allowed to turn down other stuff, right? He said, you're a giver and everybody wants you in something and you don't have to say yes to everything. And I thought, by Jove, that's smart. So I have formally resigned, for example, from my clerkship, which is the Quaker word for being in charge of something at Morristown Friends in terms of my alumni association role. And they were very bummed because after 8 years, we got a lot accomplished. But I have formally exited that and helped them to find a new leader. And, you know, I think from a logistics perspective, I live literally across the street. I'm on Roberts Avenue, number 22, the house with all the skeletons, if anyone is interested.
I lived at 17.
Oh,
Is that?
such a great one. And, although I just blurted out. my
You're the
address,
ones you
sorry.
did. I was like, so people can look
I
it up.
think,
and
yeah, it's a small town and people.
And
probably know
your
it.
street is the one that has the 4th of July.
We do. You will see me every,
The-
whenever the parade happens, doing a dance with the other moms and children, so yes. But so my thing, I live across the street, it is very easy, I got here in 6 minutes, even though I ran into 5 neighbors who wanted to chat. And so that's not a problem, and I work from home. So, I'm a fully remote worker, I have been for about 7 years, so that doesn't pose a concern.
Great. Do you have any questions for us?
Thank you. I suppose I would ask, you know, and there might be 10 different answers, but as you folks think about the strategic planning exercise that you've been working on for several years, and kind of big change afoot, is there a single kind of priority topic that you would all agree is the hottest of topics, or not?
So we every year have a retreat in July where we
Okay.
talk about things we want to consider, and we try to, in that retreat, hash out the direction of the board for that year. But when you mentioned like the strategic plan, one thing that we just recently approved is our upcoming long-range facilities and planning committee. That's more specific related to grounds and facilities, but the point is that we have to we're at the stages where we've accomplished a lot, but now we have to define the next steps to be accomplished.
Okay.
And there's still ongoing things that we're doing as well, from curriculum, social, emotional learning. But, you know, I think we tend to relook at things every, you know, maybe around 3 years or so.
Sure, to do a real kind of.
We do
thorough-
it yearly as well, but, you know, if you have a big plan,
Mhm.
it gets reassessed every 3 years
Yeah.
roundabout approximately.
Which makes a ton of sense because, you know, you can identify these big ticket items, but then the much harder exercise is what you've all been working on, which is how do we kind of execute on that? How do we form strategies? How do we figure out accountable parties and who we need to engage to actually take it from, you know, a fancy PowerPoint or a beautiful Word doc and put it into practice?
Yeah, and it's a good time to have new members coming on because we are at the beginning of something.
Sure.
So we're excited. That's good. Anything else?
No, I think this was super helpful. As I say, you know, several of you have been willing to chat and share ideas about your experience, and I am excited to hopefully be joining your team, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for
so
coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a great
Thank
evening,
you.
everybody.
And happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Have fun.
It's pretty good she's here.
She's going now to the.
Prime dinner time.
It's true, but this one will send his thanks as well, everybody.
Sure.
Have a great
You too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we need that out.
Are these in order of interviewees?
Yeah.
Nice, thank you.
I know, you did.
I don't know if any of you guys got a printed out binder, but Barbara in the office, okay, I don't know if you guys can tell. It's alphabetized by name, so if I want to look them up, I find it real easy. The tabs have different colors, like there's not 2 white ones in a row, there's not 2 green ones in a row. And then they move in the same, like it just, I got this and I thought, wow, like just never.
I need her in my pantry.
You got the new guys.
Yeah, it's-
Oh, I used to have an assistant.
We're good, right?
Yeah, we
Start early.
Yeah.
Was it 17?
When I was at the corporate world.
Yeah, yeah, that, but I am trying to.
I could use one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
So
you
you use Grammarly too?
I do, yeah.
I use Grammarly too, dude. I made my students use it.
Yeah, oh, well, you're like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I love it.
I told you something, it's not always on.
I do the same thing. It's trouble updating.
I
Okay.
think they made grammar changes out of it.
How are you?
Thanks.
This is Greg Essenfair. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Nice to meet everybody who I don't know.
Okay, we just have, just some typical interview type questions. It's okay, we've read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Please restate your reasons and desire to serve on Haddonfield School District's Board of Ed.
Sure. Living in town for over 17 years, I've been involved in the community from a athletics perspective and other things volunteering in town. I've always had a busy work schedule pre-COVID, pre-switching jobs a few years ago, and it didn't allow me enough time to be in town to do other things related to school or anything else in town. So a few years ago, that changed. I'm around a lot more now, and I have more time to dedicate to things in the local community. I saw the school board opening pop up. It was something I was interested in. I've always had no issues, just questions about why certain decisions were made. And I promised, instead of wondering about it, get involved like anything else and see if you can lend a helping hand and help with the strategic direction of the board, obviously being an important factor with 2 kids in the school system. And so that's why I've elected to come in and apply for the position.
Great, and thank you for that. Can you share with us can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community work?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I volunteered as a Little League coach. I ran a Little League snack bar for 5 or 6 years. I coached lacrosse for the 7th, 8th grade team. Was involved in field hockey, the Lizzie Haddon 5K that my wife was in charge of for a few years, but obviously was involved in that. We try to get our kids in to do some volunteer work, whether it's care packages for the military and things of that nature. So we've been involved in that. We're always looking for opportunities to get our kids involved also, and also my wife and I try to get involved volunteering. Church-based or sort of anything we're open for.
I remember the snack bar days.
We handed it over.
Yeah, and that's always a relief. How do you define transparency? And do you feel the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision making? Please provide an example. If not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
I don't have any issues with transparency that I'm coming here for. As I said, I think it's something I want to be involved in based on my kids being at the ages they are, my being able to spend some additional time. As far as myself with transparency, I'm an open person. I like debate. I like to know why we're making certain decisions. I think I said in the letter or one of the follow-ups, I'm not right all the time. I'm hopefully right 50% of the time. But as us as a board come together, we make a difficult decision. I just need to understand why we made it. And I'm flying the flag and supporting the cause. I think the debate should be, internal. We come to the agreement, and then we all march in that direction. So I have a good bit of experience from a professional career doing that, and I think it would translate well to you.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Justin.
This is Greg Essenfair.
Hi, nice to meet you. Sorry, Mike.
Don't worry.
And we were saying, as Linda pointed out in the last interview, the mask, like we're smiling, but we feel like like zero
No
actual
feedback.
facial expressions. Like you can't. That's what so much of an interview is reading with those expressions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm frowning.
Okay, please provide your experience working as a board or working as a member of a board or a similar group. Detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team.
I think the first thing is, as a member of the team, obviously, you make joint decisions and form the direction of, the future of this board and the school district. I've been on, various lacrosse board, baseball, Little League board. There's decisions that have to be made. How is money going to be spent? What are they going to redo? Everybody wants everything, and you got to sort of take it back, take a deep breath, and say, what can we afford? What makes sense from that perspective? And I would guess you guys have a lot of that going on. Everybody wants everything done yesterday. And there's obviously financial barriers to it, but you need to make the right decisions, be able to justify them and execute on the long-term plan. So everything ultimately gets done, but it's not going to get done tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Okay, here's a scenario for you. Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with a teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? What if the individual insists on an answer?
My first response would be that's really not my position as being a board member. You have to take that up to the correct chain of command, whether it's a teacher, the teacher supervisor, superintendent, wherever it gets to. I don't view that as, I would run away from that conversation as fast as I could, as late as I could, quite frankly.
Okay, as a board member, you're representing the community and can be significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittee meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, and often during school operation hours, so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions on 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues making this commitment?
I don't see any issues making the commitment. I have an office in town. I live in town. My work schedule is, travel is sort of optional for me, especially with COVID. I haven't traveled in a couple of years, but I'm sure that'll change. But when it does change, 99% of the time I will have the ability to dictate my travel schedule work-wise. So I understand the time commitment coming in. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
I have a couple, and I don't know if you can share it out, but I'm just curious. What was, from the board's perspective, what are the most pressing issues as you see in the near future?
Well, one of the things we were talking about, Heather, do you want to explain what, because I thought you explained that very well tonight.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of pressing issues if you want to know what are hot topics, which is slightly different than what's the direction we want to take. So as far as what's the direction we want to take, every year we have a Board of Ed retreat. Often during that retreat, the administrators will come to us with their ideas or suggestions, or maybe they'll even have a book that we review. And sometimes we have a different format every year, but some years board members have even listed what was the most important thing for them to tackle. And we would all discuss it as a group and then prioritize all of those ideas that were brainstormed. And sometimes it takes more than one session. So, essentially we revisit it every year. Most recently, I feel like the longest term plan was defined perhaps when Larry Mussolini was here and we looked at a multi-year plan for social emotional learning. So there are times that the plan is longer. There are times like for facilities when a referendum will make it longer. And I feel like right now we're at a point in time where we've accomplished several things, and we're probably at a good point with new members coming on the board to talk about upcoming priorities together and chart that course together.
What do you think has been the biggest accomplishment of the board in the past couple of years?
Isn't it, it's funny, somebody asked me this off the side, like they were doing an interview for something personal. Like, what's that? And, for me, I always feel like, I don't know, I'm not one to, I don't think about, I just think of the next thing. I feel like so much of what we accomplish, I attribute to the entire district. So I never really feel like an ownership of, and that's one of the hard parts, but one of the great parts about the board is I don't feel that it's kind of like amazing because you watch these great things happen and you're a part of it, but to watch everyone just be so instrumental. I don't know. I feel like my part, like I just never feel like I could say I did that. I feel like the school itself, I feel like it's
very invested. Many years.
But I
The
do
admin
think,
team.
The entire admin team is the strongest
Yes.
admin team
I mean-
we've ever had since I've been on the board for 11 years. So I'm like, we're set up really well with the team in place.
They make us look good.
And I would say that, several years ago, where, we failed CUSAC, I feel like I have watched just systems be in place and building upon that. And we are poised at a place to say what's next rather than trying to dig out a hole. So I do think that great admin and getting us to the place where all the great foundations is in place.
How do you feel the board's relationship is with the town presently?
Like the, how our,
How
with the
you're
borough,
viewed, yeah,
well,
But with the town community or the borough?
community, I'm sorry.
oh, okay, I was gonna say. Well, I'm personally good friends with Colleen, have nothing to do with the board borough. But, I feel like we're in a good place. I mean, I think that we have really worked on being very transparent. I think it's been a very difficult few years with COVID and a lot of things that, and all of that brought. And I feel like the community has been very supportive, shown by how many people have applied. And also, how many people are volunteering? Like, shout out to Satwick, who was in the middle school teaching STEM and things like that, where people are really coming to the community and working together. And I think we have more community representation on our subcommittees than we've ever had. So I do feel like it's really been a community effort as for the progress that we've made. I think it's great.
As a follow-up to that, hats off to this board who, in the last 20 months, have been functioning under a microscope that no other board in the history of Haddonfield or anywhere in America maybe has faced. And the entire time, the transparency, listening to criticism, accepting criticism, standing what we believe was the right thing to do, even though sometimes there were tough decisions that had to be made. And I think that we're a smart community. And I think that even those who disagree with some of the decisions made by the board understand them and appreciate the challenges faced by this board and the way they rose.
I would completely agree. The question wasn't it.
No.
And an opportunity, because we can tell all
I thought it was
all the 5 people watching.
I thought it was an interesting question, and I would love for your perspective. I mean, I think that it is more difficult for us, but I would love to hear what you think the relationship is.
I think the relationship is positive. It's something I'd like to be part of. As Chuck said, I think there's been difficult decisions. Whether I agree with them or disagree with them is not for debate. I think they were explained properly. And as an outsider looking in, I sat there and said, "Oh, you make a good point. Move on." Or I agree. So I'm not giving my opinion in either way. I'm just saying I think it was handled very well. I think it was transparent. So from an outsider looking in, I think it's positive.
Yeah, if I can comment on something you just said that really resonated with me, that I really appreciated that you said, was that, and I'm trying to remember your exact words, but it was something like it wasn't really for you to say, but that it was well articulated. So there's many times on the board, certain things are up for our involvement, and other things are more, did the admin do the proper channels? Did they do the proper evaluation? Is it well thought out? And if the answer to that is yes, there's so many decisions that are often solely theirs.
We're the sniff test. We're not, that's what we do as a board. From your accomplishment question, one of the things I'm really proud of is, in the face of opposition, understanding that our grades were in the way of our students, the way we graded them, the way we recognize grading. And it's an easy thing to say, well, that's the way we've always done it, so that's the way we're going to do it. And where the sniff test comes in is nobody on the board is an expert in that area at all, but we have plenty of them.
Right.
And if they can, they prove to us that we needed to change. And that's all I needed to know. But it comes with the trust too. So as the people judge to keep an eye on the administration to see how well they, when you take the oath, you don't administer the schools, you make sure they're well run. If you're confident that you're in a position to make sure they're well run, then those decisions become easier, even when the public who has as much knowledge as you do on the topic, but without the expertise of what's right. It makes it easy to be able to stand there and say, have patience and wait, you'll see. And, that's an area that I think from a pride standpoint, they were right. And it's already bearing fruit. And you just have to trust that your smell, you were voted for your sniff, or you were picked for your ability to smell. You were voted for your ability to smell. And the public will judge you on your ability to
How you smell?
how you smell. You almost never wear shoes, so it smells of feet.
My dog.
Well, no, they.
Any more questions for us?
I don't have any more.
Very well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate your time, bringing everybody in.
It's great seeing you.
Forward to hopefully working with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Take care.
Okay.
Six 30, I mean, sorry, 7:30?
7:35.
Yeah, 7:35.
7:35, yeah.
We went through.
We started early.
Oh, and we started early.
Is that everything?
Maybe.
Was she an interview?
What's that?
Is,
No, she said she.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know everybody.
Oh, you do, okay, yeah, I didn't know her, I thought that was maybe her, we were.
Walk around on the stretch.
The L and the trolley were especially crazy today. Was becoming part of the new, like I say, I know in the full unit. I checked. October.
Hey, Jamie.
I think it's so. Fortunately, kids people, they have money in their pockets, be stupid.
Did you see that, like, they call it mixes? At City Hall, yeah.
Oh, the donuts.
Yeah.
That's not half of it.
That was nuts.
But you see, like, when you're in town, I mean, I don't work on campus, I work off, so in universities too, well, in West Philly, not even universities, I mean, just, in the summertime, the four-wheelers and the three-wheelers and the dirt bikes, they're just crazy.
It's getting worse.
Fireworks all the time.
Yeah, the fireworks were like legitimate fireworks.
Yeah. Oh, no, but that happens all the time. Like, now it's getting later in the year, you see fireworks.
That's why at some point Jamie and me call, people who are scheduled to be there.
A lot of times it's just people blowing us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we're actually not ahead.
20 minutes out.
Oh.
I mean, and this is like.
So here's the thing, right?
Things about
So we
fireworks.
just
Step
stepped
35.
The next person starts at
So,
7:30.
Yeah.
it's both pages.
So my point,
Yeah.
The supermarket's not.
Yeah.
and fireworks. Why?
Yeah.
That's what I thought we could handle.
It hurts me to write, so.
Oh, all right, all right. I'm gonna find my, Justin, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing really well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No.
I just saw that the dance room is open for naps and relaxation. I would be all over that.
Wow. Here it is, I found it.
Yeah, that doesn't work. These guys are professionals, that might have worked in even
Yeah.
low grade college.
I was teaching, I was in the class, I had no windows. And I built a master schedule, I was teaching. I had a big comfy chair and I gave myself a lunch. Turn the lights, I was doing that every day. I would just tell the class, my class would come in, I said, just knock down the door.
That's C102, like the tiered one?
100.
Oh, 100.
Yeah, it's actually designed to be a book. And then
Oh,
we were
really?
classroom, yeah.
So it's
Wake
warm,
me up when you get.
the
there.
acoustics are like,
No windows. I know.
Yeah.
The worst one is just pitch black.
Hey,
100
Jamie.
in the hall.
So, Julia.
One next door.
Amy.
Okay, all right.
And she wasn't when I came out.
Yeah.
because that's like.
So, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself, I know I shared it with Lynn and Linda, but I don't know if I said it with you. I don't know if anybody has the contact information for anybody who's later on the list.
We asked them to come up 10 minutes early, right? We asked
No,
them-
but like, if you could get Steve, because he's last to come earlier, then he might fit in between somebody else. Do you know what I mean? If he's available, so.
Yeah, we asked them to come 10 minutes early, right?
Right, but we are,
So what are we now? So,
We're 15 minutes.
Well, we'll be back better on
first two
schedule
are about,
because.
run about 16 minutes each, running 20 minutes. So
okay.
we're 8.
And then we have 5 minutes
5 minutes
between
between,
already,
so
yeah.
yeah.
We started early, we wrapped up early, and we took Greg early.
And we were jumping, so I don't even.
When I got to the park,
We're turning the day.
Meeting's Chuck on.
Probably call, so you know, if you get here.
Yeah, Dave said, you know the people on the list, you want to call and see if somebody wants.
Oh, I don't know like that.
Oh, huh.
We have the resumes, right? can-
We do have the
the phone
resumes,
numbers.
yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, do you want me to call?
Well, we should have a plan of what we're gonna tell them, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So rather than say, if we move everyone up and say 10 minutes, or 20 minutes early,
Should we wait till the next one?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, we might be back on time.
Right,
and then if you move anybody, I think it's easiest if you start with the last person, because it's
yeah, you just.
too hard right before somebody's running out the door to
Yeah.
have to text all 4 of them and bump them all 4 up, or.
Right, that makes sense.
I just wanna get back to the snacks.
But it's still snacks, snack bars, granola bars, Bella Vita biscuits, oatmeal crumble.
I don't think it's all of you. Oh, thank you.
There's a couple
I'll
of.
take a look.
So
Like
the
early Halloween.
Monday night was senior night for soccer. And our entire dining room table is filled with bags that, all the snacks. So like, she's doing her homework and then she'll go up and she'll go pick it through her bag, so like, it is snack heaven. I think she will go and steal it every once in a while.
Tom doesn't get to eat at work. So we have a stockpile of like, because that's what he brings and eats all day. And so I have like, I was literally like. Oh, that's right. I snuck it in. I have a cough drop. That's what
And Colleen and Miss May,
Oh, that's great. Love that.
I feel like that was just the best possible. I heard it was snack time.
Part of herself.
No, I ate before I came.
But it's nice to hear it's like right on time. I'm so great because I have a little one that's finishing basketball at practice at 8, so it'll be perfect time.
Perfect timing. Are they playing at the high school here or are they?
Yeah, he's at the high school for just the drop-in hours
The
for
urban
fifth
gym?
graders.
I'm so glad that someone moved up the table at some point. I'm so glad that they
Yeah,
thought
John
about
did
that.
that,
It was
yes.
pretty far away.
Please have a seat.
Yeah,
Have a
take a
seat.
I'm steaming up.
And we were talking before, I'm repeating what other people have said, but because we're wearing our masks, we, I guess apologize. You can't tell that we're smiling and trying to be warm and welcoming.
Yeah.
Totally used to that at this point. Unfortunately, fortunately, however we look at it, yeah. The worst part though is the steaming up.
Is it
Like,
like
I'm
that? Yeah.
like the top of the bridge of the mask, but
I got my hair cut yesterday and I didn't wear a disposable mask. I wore like my regular one. And all the hair must have gotten.
oh, yeah,
Next time I'm wearing a disposable mask.
yeah, I did that. That way I threw the mask away and got a new one as soon as I walked out. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I was like, I actually didn't wear that one tonight because I was like, I know, so if I have itchy hair and stuff.
Sit there sneezing the whole time.
You know, like, tell me if you want a snack bar?
No, thank you, though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Thank you for asking.
Still better than that.
It's just there. Are we gonna start it?
Yeah.
When Justin comes back.
I think he's just politely eating a snack bar.
I figured people were coming from work.
You certainly can help yourself.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
please.
Should have brought extra dinner. We had leftovers because the other one heading to the middle school for basketball, so he didn't even eat with us, so.
Okay, so we just have, interview questions, and thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, we've read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Please restate your reasons and desires to serve on Haddon School District's Board of Education.
So the reason I want to stand is as a parent of 3 children who have gone through parts of the Haddonfield School District. I have 2 in the high school, 1 that's currently in the elementary school. And the fact that we're new residents to Haddonfield, we've been here only for the last 2.5 years. I think that I can bring the insight of having parented and seen children go through multiple school districts around the country. And that diversity is really critical to the functioning of a school board. And having served in leadership positions on other boards, I'm currently a member of the board of directors for the American Thyroid Association. I think it's critical to have institutional memory within a board and have senior members, but I think for a board to function properly and to serve all of its constituents, it also needs fresh ideas, new people coming in, and I think that I can bring that diversity, being a newer resident to the town of Haddonfield, but also having seen and experienced school boards around the country.
Great, thank you. Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
So within Haddonfield, I've been trying to assist where my children will let me with the sports programs. Hit a lot of resistance with don't want mom to be coach, but involvement in that aspect. I do work full time, so I have not been as active as I would like at times within the PTA, being able to volunteer to be in the classrooms, just because of the fact that I do have a full-time job outside, but assist with whatever I can in the after hours and being actively engaged within our children's matriculation through the school systems. I also am actively involved with community outreach and have been prior to COVID, since a lot of that dampened things with not being able to get into the classrooms, but speaking within elementary schools throughout my children's careers about opportunities and jobs in STEM. I think it's critically important to see women in science and the power of what women can do in science. That I run my own research laboratory, so spend a lot of time with outreach, especially in Philadelphia now, just because it's been easier with the programs provided by Penn to do the outreach, but just to provide that opportunity to show what a career in research, what women in STEM can do, and really to try to do what I can to demystify science and research, and cancer research in particular, being able to express that and explain that to the lay public as well as to our children.
Great, thank you. How do you define transparency? And do you feel that the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example, and if not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
So to me, transparency is to provide all of the facts so that an individual can see how a decision was made. We're not always going to agree on every decision, and I do this every day in a laboratory. I don't always like the data that comes in, but with the data at hand, then we can make rational decisions. So I think transparency is about sharing all of the data, not selected data, all of the data. I do think that the school board is doing well and is transparent. I do think that there are ways in which we have to better understand as a community all of the mechanisms of communication and how people are seeking their information. And I don't think this is a fault of the school board. I'm struggling with it in my own career of understanding where people are getting their information. And I think as a selected community, we need to do the best job possible to figure out where people are getting that information to make sure that we're reaching them. I think the school board is doing an excellent job trying to do that with the the virtual meetings, providing the Zoom opportunities. I think there's other ways we have to just make sure that we're not missing populations because they're digesting and absorbing that information from other sources.
Great, thank you. That is it's just a tough issue right now, I think, in general, where people are getting their information.
Well, it is. It's terrible. And, and I'm finding that we send emails, but emails go unanswered. Or do you try Twitter, and social media comes with its own biases. But it's really difficult. And, people don't pick up a phone if they don't see the number. I mean, I do the same thing. As soon as I see unknown at night, mute that call, we can take it later. So.
And we don't check messages, even voicemails like
Nope.
we used to.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a collective problem that all of us, beyond even just the school board, need to figure out how do we come over that hump, and how do we build that sense of community and communication again.
Thank you. Hey, can you please provide your experience working as a board member? I know you talked a little bit about the association rights. You can talk more about that. But can you talk about your experience as a board member or a similar group, and detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team?
So I think, one of the most important parts of a board and any type of team is to have diversity of opinion. You're not always going to agree. So the keys, in my opinion, are to be respectful, to listen, to hear, to be respectful with criticism. It shouldn't be about rubber stamping and always agreeing. We have to have dissension. That's how decisions are made, and that's how you move forward. That's, I think, the root of all of our civics in the way these institutions were designed. They were designed to have civil discourse and to disagree. So I think it's to respect the hierarchy. So for me, right now I'm a new incoming board member to the American Thyroid Association. I envision my job at the beginning as a lot of listen and learn and understand the dynamics within the committee, within the community, what the needs are, to bring my background and experience in a respectful manner, to not just be the person that's always dissenting or always agreeing, but and to find that balance of being able to respectfully have the discourse so that you can have conversations and be frank. I've also led the discussions. I'm just rotating off of leading a task force for redesigning our granting program. And again, there were times when we didn't all agree. And it's the job as the co-leader or of that task force to point out where there are discrepancies, where people contradict themselves, to not be aggressive and such, but to at least get to the root of what are the discrepancies and what are the dissenting opinions, and to be able to cohesively and coherently reframe that. And then the job of a committee is to go with what the majority rules, as long as it is not diabolically against your values or you think it's actually inducing harm. I think the job of being on a committee is to respectfully disagree, but you also go with the decisions that are made as a committee, as long as it's been made by a committee and not just a dictatorship and this is my way or the highway.
Great, thank you. So we have a scenario for you. Somebody stops you in the ACME and expresses concern with a teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? And what if the individual insists on an answer?
So we definitely need to respectfully deflect giving an answer. It's not my job to give an answer, especially not to speak on behalf of the entire board. This is a board and it's not an individual person. I would respectfully ask for them to communicate the story to me. If it's very aggressive, I would ask for it to be moved more discreetly and not out of the middle of the ACME, whether we can go in to speak in a little bit more private area, especially if we're going to be discussing teachers and students and things. That's not appropriate to be doing it in a large public forum like that or with lots of people that could be listening. And to gather the information. And I think as a board member, then it's my duty to bring it back to the board. We do represent the community, that we need to do our due diligence to understand what the problem is and to also understand the entire story. Because there's always two sides to a story. So I think it's important to do the due diligence, but it absolutely is my role as a member of the board to listen and be respectful of any concerns and to bring it back to the board to report it if necessary. Or
Great, thank you. Okay, this is our final question. As a member of the board, you're representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittee meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues meeting this commitment?
not as long as I know the commitment and it's not a Wednesday night that all of a sudden you need to be at this meeting on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. that, I do have a career outside of this and absolutely committed to making it work, but just need to be able to make sure that I can flex my schedule to have coverage in my own laboratory and not skew on the commitments that I've already made for that as well. But I don't envision that would be an issue as long as I know ahead of time. Like I said, it's not emergency, and emergencies happen. And when that happens, then we just have to work together to make that work.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I mean, my biggest question or I guess concern is how you envision integrating in an individual. I know we have decisions to be made with the review of the school district and things like that, to how you plan to integrate a brand new person in a quick speed to bring up to speed, to integrate, to help make as thoughtful and well-informed decision as possible, especially over this tight time frame with one expiring in 2 months or 3 months and another in 15 months.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and we've been working on that since the summer. And we're really doing a very thorough onboarding. So whoever comes in, we've worked with Chuck, and we have Linda and I have been developing just really an onboarding program so that you come in and you'll understand the process that the role the board serves, the role that the role you'll serve on the board, as well as the operations of the school and how a board member plays into that, and understand the operations and the whole chain of command so that you know who reports to who. And that can give you a good sense of our situation, how we're situated within the district as a whole. And you'll be on subcommittees right away, so you'll start learning that a lot of the information you learn is at the subcommittees. We'd like to make sure if you haven't been to meetings and haven't been seeing the meetings, that you go back and watch some of the footage. Feel free to fast forward through some of our but for the most part, the meetings have a lot of really valuable information.
Mm-hmm.
And so even viewing those from the past few months will really get you up to speed on a lot of the issues that we're facing right now.
And I guess the next question is, when do you anticipate making a decision?
Probably within the next few days.
Okay.
And our goal would be to appoint the successful candidates next Thursday. We have action meetings for the purpose of appointing people.
Okay,
The vote has to be a public vote.
Yep.
So that would be next Thursday. At that point in time, we would have to go through, background check, fingerprinting, background check, there's paperwork. And then if we can get that done quickly enough, the, October 28th would be a goal to have people sworn in. If not, it would be November 9th.
okay. Great. Anyone else have any other questions?
No, from a concern about to learn and be a board member, the School Boards Association also, there's also required training
Okay,
that you take every year of your first 3 years as a board member into different areas of governance, of public financing, a lot, nobody's really an expert in public financing. And then the third one is like legal, just the legal aspects of being a board member. I think legal's first.
No, I think governance. is
Oh,
first.
governance first,
Legal is
legal second, and finance is third.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
in. It was
Thank
nice
you so
to
much
see you.
for this opportunity.
We'll talk about the basketball.
Yeah, yeah. That doesn't even have to walk home on our own, so. Thank you.
Do you want me to, see if there's anybody in the hallway, and then we could
Sure.
see if Steve can come in, maybe like 2 minutes.
Never seen the time about.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. So then this means.
My colleague used to have festivals every year, faithful, he was like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 1 of 7. We're Philly, we got festivals all the time.
So.
Aaron agrees.
Yeah.
You can go into a
Busy.
Gonna say some stuff.
check out.
Oh, in your family, like, oh, in my family.
So when I
Maybe.
heard about it.
I'm the one who.
And then I was like, this is this is what they
I'm
do.
really sorry. I will know.
I'm positive. Thank you, sir.
Yes, but.
What's Mr. Marie?
We can make. So. Director.
Well, college is different, 'cause that's
That's true.
it's not the real experience, it's just college
Yeah.
experience.
I think
So I can see.
You think we know Lloyd.
Where do you go? UCSD?
yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll cover it.
Yeah, so
There
like.
was one time. where
Yeah.
I had
Sure.
decided to videotape.
My sister lives in Pleasant Beach.
You know, just realizing, she was getting.
Right after I get neighbors.
so much.
I mean, it's the traffic out her life and
She
I
grew up
miss the
in
grit of the
in
North.
Italy.
Yeah.
It's so hot.
When, they actually,
It's just
the
so-
Germans
Change the
came
scenery,
and
but-
displaced them, like, they had to leave
Yeah.
their houses and become soldiers.
No trouble.
I didn't even know that. So when I
Go on, boy.
started asking those questions, you know, my grandmother, because,
Just
she
Bay areas
always
are.
was just part of the,
Yes.
the steading of the
It's
family.
look where you want me, you look
And
around
this
there.
was about her.
And they never come back,
She got
it's
the
visit every
opportunity to tell
once in a
us.
while.
So,
It's-
yeah.
The historical fiction novel I'm writing for my thesis is based on my grandma. And so.
Yeah, they have some going on like this for
That's
me.
why I got up.
So like when you have power, you have that kind of weather.
Kind of like-
The good thing is you can be somewhere to watch.
Yeah. I was so great.
Yeah, you may need it.
Can't remember what it's called. I'm gonna have to go look it up, but there's a program.
Yeah, my
Alright,
niece
hey,
did it,
Jamie.
Whale
I
Camp.
tried the number on the resume and the number on the school
Like,
directory.
where he was
and
working,
nobody's
like working
picking
on
up.
a ship.
Yeah.
But what I'd
Like
like to
whales,
suggest,
whale
if,
tracking.
obviously only if they can do it.
That was
Because I can't
Colin's
reach
thing,
Tim
though.
Bushman, I'd love to just call
Yeah.
New Sheen and see if she is able to come, because she's the next person, maybe, earlier than 10 minutes early and sit and wait in the hallway since we're getting through all of them quicker.
Yeah, let
And then we'll
her
call in order.
let her one ahead of time and she get her own, right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, that she realizes she might have to wait, but I'm just gonna go in order if it's less.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, check with
Tim Bushman, I tried,
Okay.
the number in the directory is
How about
voice.
Steve Sweet? Did you have any luck with him?
No, I just thought if Tim Bushman is coming earlier, then I could have
Okay, yeah.
Steve Sweet fill in if you can, but now I'm gonna call New Sheen real quick.
When would you? Some people write like they want to very some write a little bit, but by the end of the year, you've got the time that happens for. Oh, how long?
Well, that's, oh, is that what the writing project is?
No, this is something, I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll send it out there. Wait a minute.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like the interviewing the seniors.
Yeah, already.
Yeah,
That's
so
fantastic.
Angela is actually doing that, and she came home and she,
That's shit.
First of all, she was really excited about the idea of it, and then they went to.
Good, listen,
She came home,
we've been
and
going through all of the
she
interviews
loved
much
doing it,
earlier
and she
than,
talked with the woman who was
than was
93 years old.
scheduled.
And
There is one person ahead of me who is not here yet, but because
Yeah.
all of them have been
Win,
quicker,
win.
I'm wondering if you have the flexibility to get here maybe around 8 and just be
Yeah.
waiting in the hallway. I'm gonna call everybody after you to see if they can
It's
bump
a
it up
shame
as
that
well. There might
not
be a little
everybody
bit of waiting.
gets a
If
chance to do
you
it.
can't come earlier, that's okay, we'll juggle it,
Not,
but
not
I
every
just wanted
kid.
to
gets a chance.
ask and see
Yeah.
if it's possible.
Well, there's something else. All sorts of things. Another one is interviewing with the people that come back for Memorial Day.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And there's a middle school one.
Well, no, I'm trying to I might call the people behind you to come at 8 if it's easier for you to hit
It's
your
just good for
8:25
these
slot.
kids to see that there's a person behind what just looks like
Yeah.
an old person, you know?
Yeah.
What's funny is I taught a senior, actually, it was supposed to be seniors, but
Perfect.
so many younger people.
I'll tell you what,
So it was this.
Plan on being here,
Memo
as you
writing
said,
class,
around
and there was this
8:10,
woman
and
who
I'll
was
just bump up the other guys
validating
earlier,
and
so
she
like
looked like the
30 or so,
quietest,
okay?
meekest
We'll be
woman.
good. We'll see you around 8:10.
We're all
We'll
talking
come
a
out
little
and
bit
get you in the
about
hallway.
ourselves. She's like, I'm a clown.
What, do I have music?
Goes,
Okay,
so
so,
like,
wow.
I've never really seen that.
So as you drive past the high school.
That's really
Really
neat.
interesting. I always think of that when I do memoir writing. It's just
There's
writing
parking
about
lot
life
right after the high school, it's like right, don't drive too fast, pull into the parking lot. And then you're going to walk, I'm trying to explain to her how to get to the library when she comes. I have my AirPods on so they can hear my side of the conversation. You're gonna walk towards the main entrance doors of the high school. There's arches there, and when you go into that little alcove, door on the left. The door on the left will walk you through the main office. Follow that hallway around, and as you do that, there's gonna be a ramp going up to on your left-hand side. walk up the ramp to almost the end of that hallway, and the library is going to be on your left. If you look around right in front of the library, you'll see like a women's bathroom, a men's bathroom. If you just wait in the hallway, when the person who interviews before you is done, someone will come out and get you. All right. All right, bye-bye. See you soon.
Oh, thank you for that, Gina.
All right, so I also called Greco and could not get him. I'm gonna try Steve Sweet.
It's probably one of those things we were just talking about.
I know,
how you
they
don't
don't recognize
answer
my
if you don't
number.
recognize your
Oh,
number.
you know what? Somebody else told me, I read something on the internet about how to block your number, and,
I wouldn't answer those either, so maybe
No,
we should just.
but
leave it-
Maybe
leave
just
it in
text
message.
and say, hi, it's Heather,
well, I'm
you
trying to
know,
get a
maybe that would
specific,
be.
time for them to show up. Hold on one second.
Because I never, and I never check my voicemail.
I answer my phone every time.
Anybody
it
who
rings.
get in touch with me knows.
You must have been for next.
Did you see me? I took 2 warning calls. I put it on do not disturb just because of the meeting.
But Dave, I mean, now you're gonna miss out on a really good deal for your car.
No, I'll get calls tomorrow about it. And for my Chase card, you know, if I have one. And let's see what else.
Hi, Eric, period. This is Heather Field from the Board of Education, period. Any chance you're able to arrive for your interview around 8:30? Question mark. We have been getting through the interviews very quickly, period. If you're able to wait in the hallway earlier, comma, that could be a big help.
Well, if you guys people 10 minutes early, then.
No worries if you can't. period.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
This is where I get.
So,
mad
yeah,
at
so
my dad.
then, yeah, this is where what?
I get mad at my dad now. If I was coming to an interview, I was told 10 minutes early, I would have been here at 25.
All right, Tom Coughlin. On time is 5 minutes
There you
late.
go.
Is that?
He says on time is 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
That's his expression.
Yeah, sometimes hard though when you're
That's when
juggling
you
kids'
try to
activities.
interview, when people were here for school, they're like, I can't make it, can we do it the next day? It's like, like, when I was young,
Yeah,
my
at
dad
Rowan, we
said,
tell
I
our
don't care
student
what you
teachers,
got.
well, I mean, and these
Yes,
people
but
are
be
all
there when
already
you
from
want.
Rome. But we tell our student teachers on time is late.
I
Because especially
guess
when you're
I guess this is one of the
young,
cases.
learning that, and then it takes you a little while.
Yeah, somebody's gonna be late.
I was thinking of it, here's another part, one of those discussions. Yeah, I don't really hear it. It's very long. I sent a picture to Melissa Young.
From the police. Yeah, it's fine.
Hey, Steve, this is Heather
And
Field
Tim,
from the Board of
we just want to
Education.
say,
If
as you
you
sit
have
down,
someone just
we
walked
know
in,
that
hi,
we're all here, you can't see behind our masks, so imagine we are smiling.
Okay.
5 and then wait in the hallway. We'll likely be able to get you soon, but do you have that flexibility or? Okay. Yeah, that would be wonderful, and someone will come out in the hallway from the library to bring you in.
I missed
and
it. You
interview
prefer Tim or
before you
Timothy?
start.
Tim is fine.
Tim?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you then. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Tim, welcome. Thank you for coming. We just have some questions for you. We read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Please restate your reasons and desires to serve on the Hattonfield School District's Board of Ed.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the primary reason was just I saw the call come out for needing some help to help with the Board of Education, and I felt like, you know, there's not many things that I could probably be helpful in, and this is probably one of the things that, like, you know, I have some experience in, and so I felt like it was a good opportunity to maybe help out and provide some service back to the community.
Hey,
So,
I'm sorry, Ben.
yeah, I mean, that was my sort of main motivation for originally reaching.
Thank you. Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
Sure. Oh boy. So, where to start? So, I mean, I think for me, we do a lot of community service through my job. So I'm a professor at Princeton University in psychology and neuroscience, and a lot of that involves sort of public outreach and public-facing sort of communication of science, of our results, trying to engage students, but also beyond like the immediate community at Princeton, also the broader community in interest in science. And so do a lot of sort of public-facing lectures. Not a lot, I do a few public-facing lectures. Yeah, I mean, there's some outreach sort of clubs and sort of mentoring opportunities that happen through different programs at the university. I think in general, this is sort of part of my reason for also reaching out, right, is that I've sort of reached a point in my career now where I am less, it's less hectic, right? So it's very early on in academia. It's a lot of like pushing towards getting towards tenure promotion. And so that is sort of moving along. And so I think at this point, this is one of my reasons for wanting to try to sort of do more service opportunities.
Great, thank you. How do you define transparency? And do you feel the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example, and if not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
Yeah, so I define transparency, I think, in the setting of something like the Board of Education as being able to communicate to the community, the students and the parents, sort of what the motivation was, what the driving factors were in any given decision, and to sort of lay out the as much as you can, the sort of decision process that went into it, the different pros and cons of what you considered. I think, honestly, I'm not that familiar with the Board of Education, and so I don't know in terms of like what the major sort of policy decisions have been recently. And I think so. I don't know if that maybe reflects it, maybe not being transparent or me not paying attention. It's probably more the latter. But yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I really can speak to that has sort of entered into my dense skull is basically the sort of discussion around the Bancroft, right? And that's just something that I'm vaguely aware of, and that definitely seems opaque to me. And I think, but again, I'm hesitant to give any feedback because it's just something that I'm almost sure is more my end than so.
Thank you. That's a very honest answer.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We were just talking about how difficult it is now because there's so many methods of communication that trying to figure out which ones a certain audience is using is a challenge.
Yeah, that's true, and that's right, and I think different methods of communication reach different people, right?
Right. Okay, please provide your experience working as a member of a board or similar group. Detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've done that's most similar to what I imagine the Board of Education is being on faculty. So the way faculty works, at least at Princeton, and I think this is generally true, is the faculty sort of decide a lot of the educational principles or the educational goals. There's discussion of like class structures and what would you sort of as a group want to communicate and teach and how you want to represent a field to the students. And then there's also sort of budgetary constraints and discussions on that. And so I think that's sort of the closest experience I've had to being on a board similar to this. There's a lot of subcommittee work, right? So it's, we formed the subcommittee to look into, how to spend this money. We formed a subcommittee to look at diversity and inclusion, right? And so, I'm used to that sort of format where you sort of enter into a subcommittee, and you would sort of dig into something in detail. So I can give examples of, hiring subcommittees where we are in charge of sort of looking for the next faculty member. I've been involved in subcommittees involved in developing programs for mentoring postdoctoral scholars, right? So these would be people who've gotten their PhD and then are doing more training before they then move on to the independent sort of professorial position. And they're often sort of neglected in terms of support from the community. And so we formed a committee, and I was sort of the driving factor in that to form this committee that sort of provides support for them, social support, but also academic, or what's roughly equivalent to academic support. So like teaching them how you apply for jobs, things like that. And so I'm used to that, and then I'm used to the sort of like sitting and getting reports from subcommittees, right, on the various subcommittees at the faculty level, and having to make decisions, right, and trusting your colleagues to provide and present stuff in a very balanced and fair way, trusting their decision oftentimes as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a scenario question now. Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with a teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? And what if the individual insists on an answer?
Could you give me a little bit more context? Like what?
So let's say you're in the Acme buying ice cream.
Yeah,
so
what
it's
sort
gonna
of
and somebody comes up to you and says, Susie's teacher is giving way too much homework. She can't keep up with all the homework.
Yeah.
It's just unreasonable.
Yeah.
What can you do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in a case like that, I would think about sort of what is the role of board of education, right, and what is the role of different administrators in the school system, and I think something like that would be very easy to sort of express, an understanding, listen, right, and then sort of redirect to say, okay, this is not really an issue that board of education is well positioned to handle, and more it's something that I would suggest or encourage you to go talk to the principal of that elementary school. So I think that's the sort of approach I tend to take when students raise these sort of issues with me.
Great, thank you. As a board member, you're representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittee meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues meeting this requirement?
Well, I don't generally. I think one of the advantages of being in academia is that you have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. So as long as it isn't, say, coinciding with my teaching responsibilities, that's really the only thing I can't move. But other than that, I'm flexible in moving schedule. So I can be available during, working school hours typically. I'm used to having a lot of different things going on, right? I run a 10-person lab that we do a lot of different things. Teaching responsibilities to the scientific community, and so I'm used to sort of juggling, wearing multiple hats.
Great, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
I guess my biggest question is sort of what are you looking for in a board of education member? I mean, what is it? What is the sort of what do you think makes an effective board of education member?
So
I'd love to jump in here because I remember multiple board members saying this over the years, and you almost have to experience interviewing a lot of people. I was on the board when we tried to define in advance if there were any particular skills we were looking for. And then when we would interview many people, what often ended up surprising us is that people would come forward with skills and abilities that we didn't realize that we needed until we met with them. So, I mean, at least for me, I'm not looking for a particular skill set in anybody who's interviewing tonight. I think it's important, though, that, just from a soft skills perspective, that, they're willing to do the work. They're willing to share their opinion, even if it may or may not be popular. In the end, they're willing to collaborate and move forward, and just having that flexibility, if they get outvoted. And then it's just having that type of a good balance of not being, not being afraid to give a different viewpoint, but at the same time being able to move ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think, and it's sort of, I would imagine in a group like this, it's very important to be able to have differing opinions and then also be able to understand them, but and hold your own opinion. But then at the end of the day,
Yeah, and I shared that, so that was my opinion. Somebody else might be sitting here and they may have a particular skill set that I didn't, I don't know if somebody wants to add something
It's
different.
18, not a felon, and live in town. I mean, that's the requirement.
yeah.
So, I mean, anything above that, it's independent thinking. That's, I mean, for me, that's all I'm looking for, is somebody that will think independently and state their position, put the work into reason and argument, and then when a decision is rendered, back it. I mean,
Okay.
that's for me, the bar is pretty low.
Yeah, I like that you said,
Makes me
which
feel-
I don't think the bar is that low. I think putting in the time to reason a good
The
argument.
first one, the bar's
Yeah,
down.
yeah, the first
Well,
one.
That's not our bar.
Yeah.
That's the state.
Putting in the time and having the time to put in to reason a good argument, because, and I think, having worked on this board for a while, I feel like one of the things that I'm proud of it is that we often, minds are changed all the time. And anyone who can reason a good argument and bring another perspective to something is a huge contributor, regardless of the skill set you're coming with. And so I think that's key, because I think that groupthink is not a good thing when it comes to a board. So having everyone able to pitch in and show the faults in any plans that we're coming up with, the more people can be invested in that, especially early on, the better we're all going to be when we come to that final decision. So very good point, Dave. Yeah.
I guess related to that, I'm curious, like, how much do you do sort of data-driven decision-making, and how, like, what sort of data do you collect, right, in order to sort of make your decisions?
Maybe the admin.
Yeah, I mean, we do, because it does vary based on the situation, but.
We depending on our committees, we use different forms, but we have really, over the last several years, started to really look at the data and how we collect it, especially with our strategic plan goals, with our SEL, native learning, cultural responsibility. We survey students, we survey faculty, we pull those together. So there is a lot of stuff we collect specific to it. We use the panorama survey and pull things out, and then we set our goals as administrators and the building level based on the data we get from that, and then we set our goals and we assess it every year.
Yeah. I mean, at least in my experience, over the last couple of years in particular, I think it's been really insightful to see some of the data that we do. So we've started to do a lot of the same thing. Like, take a lot of surveys over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years of students at different levels, staff, and it's definitely provided a lot of, like, I think, insight that we were maybe missing. So
I think I speak from everyone on the board when we saw this July when we presented our data, and the student engagement levels shrinking as we get older, right? So kindergarten, all the students are engaged all day long. High school, senior year in high school, it's almost what, 20?
It was like 27.
27% down school engagement, right? So that right now is a number that is hanging over all of us that we think about every day when we go to bed, right? How's that 27 look different next year? And that's probably the most powerful piece we collectively do.
Yeah.
And you sold yourself a little short, I mean, on the individual student measurement level, they implemented Linkit, which is a benchmarking,
All of that.
a benchmarking assessment tool that they give throughout the year to see how learning has been absorbed. You
And
know?
that's at the teacher level too.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
data looks different based on where you are in the system. But yeah, that's a great tool.
Yeah.
That's right down to the classroom.
And even in the facilities area,
Yeah.
you know, they implemented School Dude. So Dude Solutions is it's a data providing decision helping tool to do things, preventative maintenance, capital improvement. It doesn't give you the answer when you have to do something sexy like change a boiler or fix a toilet, but it justifies the decision.
Yeah.
It helps justify for us, and then for us to justify to the community why it's important to spend public money.
Yeah.
And planning purposes for down.
Yeah,
the
sure,
line.
absolutely.
That's really great. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, we've made big strides in that area. But I think as you were saying, there's so many more tools now.
Yeah.
That make it much more accessible for people in general.
And less onerous to collect, which I think has been, you know, in the past, that was the hard part.
Yeah.
Data collection.
Right.
Exactly. The activation energy of like actually getting the data. is important.
If I can just add one plug, we've been using a lot of focus groups this past year as well. We focus grouped the teacher leadership teams individually. We focus grouped students, parents last year for the social studies committee. We're going to do it again this year with students for the math committee. So it's been kind of fun to elevate the qualitative side of research.
That's great. Fantastic.
Hey, thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, I did have one. I was curious about one of the original questions that you had on the written thing that I can't.
You had mentioned Bancroft in the beginning.
No. Bankrupt's not a big issue for me. It's just the only one that's like I said, has penetrated my content.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's, I'm more interested in like the educational.
Sure.
But, I don't know. I'm sure we'll probably get it. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm gonna walk and just take a peek at the machines out there. 'cause
Thanks, sure,
it's
yeah.
gonna arrive around this time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the snack.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have plenty more.
You did, and a variety.
You want another one, Dave?
No, I took the unhealthiest thing you have.
Yeah,
The
there's a
dark
5
chocolate
for 1
peanut butter granola bar.
brownie, 5 for 1, but-
Did you get one?
I did.
You want another one?
I can sniff corn syrup a mile away.
I know. That's most of these, yeah. Tom tells himself they're healthy, and I'm one of those. They're on the spectrum of healthy, but I don't think they're.
Which one did you have? That's my favorite thing. Yeah, that's a good one.
My favorite one are these, Nature Valley wafers with peanut butter. And they're almost like a cookie with peanut butter, which again, they call it a snack bar or whatever it is.
You know, it's so funny, there was 5K, they had breakfast at Kings Road on Saturday. So Buck had ordered all these different things, not knowing what anyone wanted. So we ordered a whole bunch of different kinds of kind bars, and then Nutri-Grain bars, which, like, the Nutri-Grain bars are like full of sugar.
Yeah.
So like here, all these runners, all the kind bars were gone. And he came out the Nutri-Grain bar. So I was like, there you go.
Yeah, they know. Yeah.
I know, and I'm still in the.
Welcome, thank you for coming. I think you came a little early for us, right?
Yeah, they're all
Thank
coming,
you.
they're all coming like 20 minutes early.
Thank you, thanks for organizing that, Heather.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be.
Okay, and so we have, some standard questions. We are smiling behind our mask. We've read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Please restate your reasons and desires to serve on the Haddonfield School District's Board of Education.
Well, I feel more than anything else, I think I bring a level of representation that not too many people in the town could bring. I am a woman of color. I have a child who is on the spectrum. So I have experience in the special education department that I think would be very helpful for a lot of families in town to feel like they're, kind of have a voice in the board. I feel like there's growing diversity within Haddonfield. So I think that it would be really nice for people to see a face, a person who may not look like your standard Haddonfield resident, that they feel more comfortable maybe bringing up certain, issues or something that concerns that they have. So I think more than anything else, I think I just bring a different perspective to the table.
Great, thank you. Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
That goes back pretty far. I've always been interested in that. I've always been doing community service since I was pretty young, like high school. My sister and I started a nonprofit organization called United Shia Youth of Chicago. Through that, we helped a lot of, there were a lot of refugees that we helped at the time, other people from lower economic backgrounds. We got them donations for furniture, kitchen items, things like that. A lot of my volunteerism has also been actually in the education realm. I've always been really interested in helping with tutoring children. When I was in graduate school in Boston, my job there was to work with underprivileged children in elementary schools, helping to tutor them. Also, when I was in college, I would be like a substitute teacher at some private Islamic schools. So it's always been a passion of mine. It's something that I'm very interested in, very invested in. I feel like we're only as a community and as a society, we're only as good as what our least privileged people are experiencing. So, if you elevate them, we elevate all of us together.
Great, thank you. How do you define transparency? And do you feel the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example. And if not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
I think transparency, I would define that as having access to certain information. I do feel that the Haddonfield School District is good in that. I do think you have to search a little bit, kind of know where to look. So I think people who might know people on the board have a little bit better access to that kind of information. It's kind of in preparation for this, I was looking through the website and looking at the different things. So I was kind of, I don't know if I want to say surprised, but I was just kind of impressed that there's so much information available as far as the budget and certain policies put in place for egalitarianism and equality and such. I was really happy to see that. It's a little overwhelming, for example, to look at the budget and see all these different numbers on there. So I think it's great that the board meetings are public sessions so people can come in and ask certain questions. I like that the agenda is available ahead of time so you can look at that. I certainly think that sometimes you have to come and absorb the material, you process it, you might have a question later. I feel like the board members themselves are accessible too. How could that change or improve? I don't know, as a parent, I feel like if I needed my answers, I kind of know where to go. I'd probably start with my children's teacher and they would lead me to the next person. I wouldn't go and email Superintendent Klaus right away. I kind of start a little bit low level and see okay.
Thanks you for that.
Kind of say nope, I'm going right to the top, and I'm that's fine. If there's anything wrong with that, there's certain issues I think definitely if it's very pressing, you have to do that. But I guess I've never been in a situation where I really, really needed to talk to somebody and kind of felt like I wasn't getting my answers right away. Perhaps, if I was on the board and people came to me and asked me like that they're having issues, I'd kind of say like, okay, how can we improve that? Think about it a little bit. One thing I did say in my letter of interest is something that I did appreciate about Haddonfield from the beginning was the transparency when it came to special education. If I may say, this is actually the year that Dr. Priola was hired as the special ed director. So when I called Karen Nubbs asking her about the special ed situation, just how the classrooms are set up, this and that, she was like, Dr. Priola was just hired. I can give you his number. And I'm like, okay. Like full transparency. And I kind of had that same feeling. I was like, I don't know if I want to bother him, but she really answered every question that I had, which I felt like was very basic information that at least 2 other school districts in the area did not give me at all. So I felt like whatever I needed to access has been very accessible.
Great, thank you. Could you please provide experience working as a member of a board or a similar group and detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team?
The only thing I can think of in recent memory is I'm a volunteer right now for an organization that is geared towards helping Muslim families in particular develop like good family relations between each other. It's focused mainly on marriage, but also how to be like better parents. It's out of a mosque from San Francisco. There's a mosque leader there who is very involved with and very interested kind of like the psychology behind healthy marriages and healthy families. So he wanted to make this a more overreaching organization. So it's a national thing now. We have representation from all over the country. So I'm involved in a few positions on that. It's all virtual because it's, like I said, a national organization. Kind of low commitment because we're all moms of young kids. So we meet periodically over the course of the year and just do some research and provide feedback. How that would help me with this experience, we come across people with all different types of personalities. I mean, there are people who, are very easy to work with. You have people who will throw you under the bus at any second because it makes them look better, or maybe because they're trying to get away from some accountability. So that's given me a new perspective on being able to work with that, because I think as certain things I've done before as like a young, maybe like a high schooler and college level, and then like a young adult, now I'm a little bit older adult, and you kind of see different personalities change in that, and you kind of, at least I kind of feel like, okay, are we past this point now where we can stop treating people that way? It's not always going to happen though. So that's kind of given me a little bit more, if you want to say grit, or maybe a little bit more of the ability to kind of stand up and say, I don't think that was right the way that you said that. Kind of having that courage to move that forward.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we have a scenario question. Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with the teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? And what if the individual insists on an answer?
So the first thing I would do is, and I think that this is probably the way to handle a lot of challenges, making sure that that person feels like they're heard and saying, I hear what you're saying. I would feel uncomfortable in the situation as well. Give them validation for their concern. Second thing is, and this is what I learned at a clerical job, actually, when people came to complain at the front desk about stuff, I would say, I don't really have the authority to help you with A, B, and C, but this is how you can handle it. Like I'll explain that there's a way that we have to approach certain things. We have to start in a certain place and then kind of see if we can handle it at a certain level before it needs to become, I don't know, a lot bigger than that. And just kind of like stay calm and say that we'll handle it. I promise that there'll be some answers for you. There's a way that we can figure this out. I'm certain of it. If they keep insisting, I would say the same thing. I don't have the authority to give you an answer right now. I don't have the authority to do what specifically you want. But I can make sure that I can to help you make sure that this is going to be addressed.
Great, thank you. And as a board member, this is the final question, by the way. You're almost done. As a board member, you're representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least two subcommittees meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours, so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues meeting this commitment?
I don't. So as of right now, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do have young children. I have 3 kids who are at Hedon right now. I have number 4 on the way, actually. But thank you. But you know, I know that theoretically that means I have all the time in the world, but I think we all know that doesn't mean that. You know, a lot of special needs parents, you know, we joke that we need an assistant just to schedule our kids' therapies and stuff, and it's really true. I feel that I do have that time. That has been one of my hesitations with looking into running for the board from before. That wasn't my only hesitation, but that was the biggest thing. I didn't want to get into something and commit to something that I couldn't realistically commit to. So I do feel that, and I did look into a little bit, like, you know, what is a time commitment, at least on paper, like which meetings I would have to be at. I feel like during school hours for someone like me works great because of the fact that my kids are in school. The evenings, I don't anticipate that would be an issue just because I believe all the dates are printed ahead of time.
Yes.
And that we can, for me, the only hurdle really is childcare. You know, my husband is a doctor, so he is on call occasionally during the month. But if we know ahead of time he's on call like a certain Thursday, then I can make sure that I have like a babysitter or something.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Good night.
I enjoyed stretching my legs. I'm just gonna walk down the ramp and see if anybody
Yeah.
has any difficulties finding their way up. I'm gonna do that in person. I'm carrying my phone, so it runs my steps.
Ow.
That you got interior motive here.
So I have my I have the Apple Watch. I used to have a Fitbit that counted my steps, but my Apple Watch doesn't count my steps. It's just not.
Sure it does. You're just not tuning into
I'm
the
just
right.
not gonna wonder. Am I just not?
Yeah, you have to either you use a face that you just click on the fitness stuff. And that's steps right there. Try it.
You got that.
And if you don't ever check it on the phone, the activity app on your phone, you can read all the steps.
Okay.
Using the activity app if you never look at it on your
Yeah,
watch.
that's funny. I just thought of that now. I've never.
But you gotta wear it. You're not wearing
I've got to wear. I know. It's charging.
Hello, guys.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Are you a Temple person?
I am. I don't work there, but I went there to school undergrad.
Okay. My husband went to did his residency and fellowship there.
Oh, it's a great school. I love it.
Yeah, we were just
So-
talking about that. He said he needs to get a new Temple sweatshirt.
I know, it's always changing and getting better, and there's so many lights there now. It's
Yeah, it really
pretty
is.
crazy. They said you could read a book from like one end of campus to the other.
Really?
Yeah.
We haven't been in a while. I took a couple education courses there.
Oh, and that's right by Cecil B, right?
Yeah.
The education school?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was Fox, so it's kind of back in the middle.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming in. We are smiling behind our back, so you know.
Even if it only just says it.
Okay, we have interview questions, obviously. Okay, we've read and reviewed your letter of interest, your resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Could you please restate your reasons and desires to serve on the Haddonfield School District's Board of Ed?
I saw that there was a need that there were openings, and I'm not green to public service as far as, you know, serving on boards and even serving on town volunteer board. And I thought that I could, with my background, make an impactful contribution to the board and to the students as well.
Thank you. Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
Sure. It's as far as when I was much younger, I was in the Key Club in high school, the Kiwanis Club. I was in Rotary when I was older. Throughout college, I signed up various fraternity sororities, other online communities, and clubs to participate in like MS rides or MS walks, Alzheimer's walks. So getting a lot of people together to help those events get put on. Also participating in them if I wasn't helping out with them. Fundraising for thousands and thousands of dollars for all those charities. I do the MS ride every year at City Shore. So I just had that, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So that's a great event. I actually volunteered a team with my company, and we have 100 riders raising money. I was in Boy Scouts growing up, so a lot of community service through there. I was an Eagle Scout, volunteer leader afterwards. Trying to think about how else I could. As far as the town goes, the HRC, I've been a member of the HRC for, I think it was 2018 at this point. And also I'm a member of the alumni board for the Fox School Business. I'm a co-chair of the finance committee and the governance committee. Also, I was I'm still on, but it's not as active, my fraternity, our chapter organization. So I definitely try to help out wherever I can, and wherever I can lend a hand. And when I saw openings, I thought this might be a good opportunity to apply my background a little bit, maybe directly than the other events.
Okay, thank you. How do you define transparency? Do you feel the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example, and if not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
I feel that the board is very transparent. I think a lot of times people sometimes don't understand what's going on, or they don't want to take the time to read it, or even attend the meetings. So what I'd recommend to that end is maybe distributing like snapshots of easily digestible, bite-sized pieces of information that people can review, and then maybe come to the review before the meeting, and then come to the meeting, and then they could ask educated questions about what's going on, and ask more direct. And I think that would make everyone on the board's lives easier to answering questions when there's a specific question to be answered, as opposed to just coming to the table but not really having your ideas formed yet.
Great. Thank you. Could you please provide your experience working as a member of a board or a similar group? And how do you see yourself functioning as a member of this team?
So I think a lot of I guess because of my role as an attorney, usually I've handled policy. They usually ask me to help out with policy documents. But I think the board's in really good shape with their policy documents right now anyway. But
Two of you together.
But certainly, to the extent that a new policy has to be drafted, or there's a question about, this board does it this way, what do you recommend, or what do you think we should do? Stuff like that. I think I could definitely add a lot of insight in. I do contract law, commercial law, so I proofread everything. Like, so if a period's out of place, or a comma, or font, italics, I think I'm on that fairly quickly as well. But I think the most valuable contribution is the risks that I can see and point out, and then hopefully contribute to the discussion and add a different point of view.
Great, thank you. Next question is a scenario question. Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with a teacher or administrator. How would you handle this, and what if the individual insists on an answer?
I actually deal with similar things in my practice as in-house counsel. So a lot of times I get asked questions like that, and in my role, what I do is I point them to a policy, point them to a website, tell them who their point of contact is for that particular issue. I've created lots of internal documents, websites for my company, and just a lot of documents to help streamline answers or questions, FAQs, hyperlinks embedded. So, but to back to your question, I would just point to the governance documents, tell them that we have a robust website that has all this information really at your fingertips. And if you have a specific question that's not answered on the policy or on the website within the policies, please reach out to XYZ for that. As far as if I knew the answer to, and I would find out who the individual was or who the point of contact is for that specific question, just for when it comes up next time.
Great. Okay, last question from us. As a board member, you're representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittees and meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours, so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues meeting this commitment?
No, my manager is very flexible with our hours and our time. And I've actually been working from home since when we started, I guess. So that won't be an issue. And from a family time management standpoint, I think there won't be any issues about it. They're very understanding way.
That helps.
And my kids are starting to get a little bit more easy to handle. So they're very good going down tonight for bed. So
How long?
3 and 1.5.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah, that's. Okay, so do you have any questions for us?
I have questions as far as, I guess, what are you looking for in the appointment? I guess the individuals that you might want to appoint, what types of backgrounds, and is there anything immediately that you're seeking a gap to fill? Probably just
Another candidate who asked a similar question, but from my experience, when we've gone through this multiple times, is that there were times when we discussed as a board, what skill set should we be looking for? What could we round out that's missing? And there was one time in particular that we actually had some specific skill sets, and we had like one amazing candidate after the other. And the discussion at the end of that was like, we shouldn't limit ourselves with preconceived notions. So I tend to come into these things just trying to see what are the strengths that each candidate is bringing. So for me, I don't look for something in advance, but as people are talking, I note different things that they can bring. But as I say that, we're a board and different people have different opinions, and they might be looking for something in particular. And that's okay too.
And can I also ask another, I don't want to cut anybody off in case anyone else has. As far as the, I guess, committee assignments, is that something that generally is discussed like from a whole board standpoint, or does the individual say, I'd really like to participate on this board or that board? Committee, sorry, not board.
Generally, as president, I appoint people to committees, but with that being said, taking into consideration people's interests, strengths, scheduling. So I would say it's collaborative, but probably not with the entire board. It would be more of a you and me conversation because everyone else would have their own interests and skill sets.
Sounds good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are the 2 major questions I had.
Can I ask an
Yeah.
individual? I'm just curious. I really appreciate that you're on the Human Relations Committee. What was the impetus? What made you decide to volunteer or get involved there?
I saw a vacancy and I did a labor and employment law.
Okay.
And I thought that, obviously not counseling them from a attorney standpoint, but just adding that additional, what about this? What about that? Have you thought about this? Is this permissible? Kind of going through the documents that we do every year, seeing if we can revamp them to make them, I guess, more friendly from, regulation standpoint or an ordinance standpoint. But mostly it was, I thought that I could contribute that, my legal background from that end. I did a lot of employment discrimination cases, stuff like that. So that was probably the best situated board to join.
All right, thanks.
Yep,
And
thank
then
you.
I'd like to circle back. So you asked about the process for subcommittee. Is there a reason? Is there a subcommittee that you're interested in? I'm curious as to why, what was behind your question.
I guess part of the question was the like from a governance standpoint, I wasn't sure if there was a desire to have like someone with a legal background help out with that, or if most of the need was satisfied with that. I was just curious about what, like a finance or some other committee, if I would, I suppose, get to choose, I guess. And I'm super flexible, so I didn't have my eye on a specific other committee. I was just kind of curious about how the process works.
Sure.
Well, the funny thing about committees, you either have expertise in the general area, but unless you do like for financing, unless it's public financing for the state of New Jersey, there's idiosyncrasies in there that you will appreciate. So if you have skill in finance, you could follow along on one level, but there's a transparency level, and we have to explain everything to the public. So almost having no experience is also a virtue, because if you can make me understand it, you can make them understand it. So you either have skill or you can have an eagerness to be explained to. Both of those are judging the effort of the district, which is one of the primary goals of the board, is to see that they're well run. You either have the expertise or you're convinced. Yeah, your willingness to learn it, to be convinced enough that you then are comfortable that the public would get it. So you don't have to have the skill, and there's almost sometimes a virtue of not having the skill.
I think for me, personally, it's I have a business background, but finance is not super strong. The guy.
Very true, Mark.
I was in the interview, but because I was appointed too, and I was like, fine.
Willing to learn, I have some background, but I don't want to, I'd like to support, not,
The hard math is done by Mike, so
Okay.
that's good.
And Ingersoll Rand. Or auditors.
Great, do you have any more questions?
No, I think that's.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you,
I
Eric.
appreciate
Really
it.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You
Thank you.
too.
Okay.
Steve was right out there.
Oh, wow. Oh, you did a great job.
And the official explainer of that question.
We can dissolve the negotiations committee, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we've got.
Until 2024.
Karen, yeah.
It's the honor seat.
That'll intimidating, however you want to describe it. So,
Welcome.
Hi, Steve, welcome.
thank you very much.
And Steve, we're all smiling behind this, recognizing that sitting there might feel intimidating, and then you can't see our faces, but know that we're all smiling, and there's more to find out.
Absolutely.
And thanks for your flexibility of adjusting the time.
Yes.
Of course, absolutely.
Okay, Steve, so thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We're obviously going to do some interview
Okay.
questions. Okay. We've read and reviewed your letter of interest, resume, and written responses. However, spoken language always provides greater insight. Can you please state your reasons and desires to serve on the Haddonfield School District's Board of Ed?
Absolutely. So I'm a newer resident to Haddonfield in a sense. I was able to build my dream home recently in the last year in Haddonfield. And I bring that up in the context of I'm coming to Haddonfield because of the schools. And the reason why schools are important to me is my daughter, who is now 1 year old. My husband and I adopted her about a year ago. So we got to bring her home from the hospital. And she is my priority, to say the least. So with that being said, right now I invest a lot of my time into volunteering in the community, such as the zoning board of adjustments for Haddonfield. But I would love to continue to invest my time into something that directly impacts my daughter, which again, not to be geeky or whatnot, but she's my everything. So that's my focus. That's my why.
You get it.
Yeah. I'm kind of preaching to a choir.
Yes,
I can tell. So.
Can you share with the board a history of your involvement with volunteerism and community service?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I've always been involved in a broad range of volunteers activities. So every time, you mean from elementary school all the way to college to now, it's evolved over time. We started out with a lot with the homeless, volunteering with the homeless, volunteering for my school, in student government, those types of things. Then as I grew my professional career, I've started using some of my experiences to align with what I've been volunteering with, such as the zoning board of Haddonfield. My entire career has been in construction, ranging from building homes to now running all the sales and marketing for a company, a construction builder. So I'm using that experience on the zoning board. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
Right, anyone else have any?
I just want to make sure.
Okay, how do you define transparency? And do you feel the Haddonfield School District Board of Ed is transparent in its work and decision-making? Please provide an example, and if not, what recommendations would you make for improvement?
So defining transparency, it's in the most simplistic way, it's not hiding anything. It's sharing information, and sometimes that information, and sometimes the thought, the way decisions are made, just sharing how those decisions are made is important for full transparency. So to answer your question in terms of definition, in the most simplistic way, it's just being open and not hiding anything. But I would like to take it just one step further. I feel like even on the zoning board, I experience this. I think people appreciate when it comes to transparency, not just your decision, but how you came up with your decision. And I think that there's a lot of respect with that. And then in terms of Haddonfield, I feel any volunteer organization, team, I feel like everyone's scrutinizing, but I feel like Haddonfield is very transparent. I mean, they try very hard. I honestly, it's not just the Board of Education. I feel like every Board of Haddonfield does its best. I have a appreciation. Everyone's volunteers. Everyone's trying very hard and get that information out. In terms of ways to improve, I approach it with a little level of ignorance because I'm not on that side, but I do think I have a marketing background, obviously, and I think just sharing information as effective as possible through social media, it's not going away. Those types of things, even website things like that, I think that helps with transparency. So you can be fully transparent, but it's about disseminating that information to as big a group as possible.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Can you please provide your experience working as a member of a board or similar group and detail how you see yourself functioning as a member of this team?
If it's okay, may I use the Haddonfield zoning board again?
Absolutely.
I feel like I keep talking about that. I can switch it up.
I imagine that's a tough job, by the way.
Everyone's always happy now.
Yes, happy and Absolutely. It's, well, and it's, I think there's a lot of similarities between the Board of Education. I think at the end of the day, they're very emotional based. You mean, so just like I talked about my daughter, it's very emotional to me. And they're talking about the education, there's a little bit of emotion there. When people are trying to build something on their home or expand their home, there's some emotion there, to say the least. And I think, in terms of my experience on the board, it's approached with some empathy. You mean, it's at the end of the day, and I just believe in the good in people. I think sometimes people come across negative, but it's not maybe their intention or something else is following them. So I try to really, put myself in those shoes, show empathy. But then I try to listen. I mean, at the end of the day, and it is sometimes hard, and especially with the zoning board, is some of the applications are very similar to ones that you just had, and you quickly find yourself you try to make a decision very quick in your head. I try very hard to just listen, and I think that goes a long ways, because I do think at the end of the day, people can tell that you all actually listen. You haven't prejudged, you haven't come up with your own decision. And then back to that transparency comment I made previously, on the zoning board, I try to explain why. You mean, so I'm very, I don't just vote yes or no before voting. I pretty much every time I share with what went through my head, how I came to the conclusion I did. I'm taking it slightly beyond that, but something I have also found through my career and a little bit on the zoning board is once a decision's made, it sounds crazy, but I can't remember which way I voted. I look at how the board voted, because at the end of the day, I feel like the discussion is what was valuable in it. And it kind of, once the decision's made, I just become part of that decision, if that makes any sense. So I think that's helped me actually grow on the zoning board, because I'm starting to see as a collective group, it's not about me, it's about the collective group, and I'm learning a lot. And frankly, I make better decisions because of listening to the people on the board that may have disagreed with what I was sharing, but by listening to them, not just the public, I've grown.
Okay, here's a scenario.
Okay.
Somebody stops you in the Acme and expresses concern with a teacher or administrator. How would you handle this? What if an individual insists on an answer?
I would obviously, contrary to what I just said, everything I said about listening, I think it would be quickly setting expectation that that's not the place to have that discussion. And it wouldn't be fair to them, because I wouldn't be able to fully listen to them and provide them an answer, as it's not a proper venue for it. And I think, again, as long as I'm a very calm, sometimes too much calm person. So I think just staying calm and staying consistent with reiterating that that's not an appropriate forum to have that discussion. I think most cases people would drop it. And then I would provide obviously guidance on, where to take that concern to, so that they at least don't feel like I'm just trying to shush them.
Great, thank you. Okay, final question from
Okay.
us. As a board member, you're representing the community, and it can be a significant time commitment that requires you to participate in at least 2 subcommittee meetings a month of 1 to 1.5 hours, often during school operation hours, so that the appropriate faculty, staff, and administration can be in attendance. In addition, your attendance at public and executive sessions 2 Thursdays per month is required. Do you see any issues making this commitment?
No, I do not. And it's not saying anything about this board, but through my volunteer experience, I've become hypersensitive to individuals that will join a board or join a volunteer organization by the notion of just excited to join, but aren't necessarily there to, I don't want to say work, but to contribute. So I go into anything such as the zoning board, any type of volunteer work, fully aware of that big time commitment. And if I'm not able to make that time commitment, it'd be unfair to everyone else. So yes, that's the answer.
Great.
And I'm very fortunate in my career. I have a lot of flexibility. actually the stay at home has provided additional flexibility with my job and understanding of the ability to have flexible work hours, and just nature of what I do, I have a lot of flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for Bill?
I just have a couple quick ones, if you don't mind. I'll start with kind of probably the most common, but I'd like if you guys are comfortable sharing is, what do you see the biggest challenge for Haddonfield School District this year, but also in 5 years? I'm just trying to understand kind of where you anticipate some of the challenges to go.
One of the biggest things we're facing right now is we're developing a new long-range facilities plan.
Okay.
And that entails, obviously, as you said, we're looking down the line, because anything that we even put in motion now is not going to come to fruition for years. So having that foresight, gathering the data, figuring out, the space that we have, the space that we need, and the difference between that, and making the decisions to get to where we need to be in 3 to 5 years. So that's going to be probably our one of our biggest issues. Next is it on this month's agenda was we're going to be having a long range facilities plan committee broken out, so it'll be on its own. So that's when we're really going to start getting our heads together and thinking about where we're moving forward with that.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to piggyback on what Jamie said, but I think one of the biggest challenges of any school district or any public school district is that there's always, unlimited needs, but limited funds to support it. And so when she talks about long-range facilities planning, some of the challenges is that our schools, and we know this, are physically very small for the number of students in them, especially some of the elementary schools. If there's an increase in population, it's hard to do, they just get more crowded unless we do an addition. But at the same point, as we just saw with COVID, there's been a lot of online learning, and there's been discussions, not here on the board, but in the educational community about what that impact might have on the future of learning. So it's trying to balance population projections, what's the right amount of money so that you're planning for the future, but at the same time, not building or spending money on things that you really don't need. And that's sometimes a challenge to figure out.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the COVID has a lot of variables out there. In terms of, even on the professional side, work from home, from the education side, how many kids are going to be, because of schooling at home, a lot better describing it. But now with the expansion, would you say the biggest challenge is the financial side or the landlocked side?
For me, the biggest challenge is making sure it's the right decision, because it's so much money when there's population fluctuations. And what I was saying, right now, students aren't allowed to work from home. It's not to elect it this year. But, I say this for I need some water, now my voice is going. But the thing is that the conversation that Larry even brought was, for some students, it might be beneficial if they have the option of taking a course or two at home with their schedule based on what other interests they may need, or there might be a small percentage that might take it more. And I think it's good not to limit yourself, and it's just to make sure that you're making the right decision. And then to piggyback what you just said is it the space? Obviously some of it is, Haddonfield is built out. You could always build out onto, the playground or something, but it's doing it and trying, if we ever decided to go that route, which, we may not, but if we did, it's making a decision that fits in with the community and looks good, given that we're so built out. There's just so many moving parts.
Well, it's also educating the community, because that's where the funding's coming from. So unlimited desires and limited funds, appreciating that, judging even from responses to the written prompts, not pointing out yours specifically, but just not understanding that there are more homes that don't have children in the school district than do. And that even comes as a surprise to some folks. It's 2/3 to 1/3. that you're convincing the community to invest in the town. And that's one of the jobs that nearly falls on the board, and not the administration, because that's not their role. Their role is educating our children and running the district. We're fiscally responsible for moving the district forward. So that's the big responsibility. And then it just comes into education. So besides, you look surprised when I said there are more families without children in the district than there are. And when we did our last referendum, there are 40, we have 6 buildings, including our Board of Education office. There are 48 buildings in the state of New Jersey that are over 100 years old that support schools. We have 2 of them. You know, and so just appreciating that, and we have 2 of them, and we have 2 that by the time our next referendum will also be on that list. That just showing the stewardship that has happened across the years to be able to say that. You know? We're getting our money's worth out of that building, but this to educate the public on that is actually a challenge, because a lot of people changed jobs, some people lost jobs, some found fortune and some lost fortune. You can't guess where people are, but they're all here at the time when we're asking for money. So, you know, that is a challenge.
I can definitely appreciate that. And I am surprised on the percentage, obviously, because you look at Haddonfield, and Haddonfield's been in both schools. But the only thing in my perspective and based on my career, even if a small percentage of the residents have children in the schools, everyone is impacted by the schools.
That's right.
And I think that's just from my experience, and I think on the educational side, it's, at the end of the day, not to repeat it, but it's everyone is impacted. And so
Your house value is based off of we have 2 industries in this town, lawyers and the schools. You know, it really knows that's it.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, at the end of the day, people appreciate how stable the housing market's here, how much the equity they've grown over the years. People that bought these little ranches for $20,000 and selling them for $400,000, and I bought one to build my house. That was tough to swallow. But when you reflect back on it, you realize it's because of the strong foundation of the town, you're fortunate to be able to have a stable housing market. And I'm so interested in facilities. It's construction, but still, it makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then in terms of, well, actually, you did answer one of my other questions in terms of trying to get the temperature of the town. Because I hate to say it, but I think I at least operate in a little bit of a bubble because I'm new, young families, people I associate with have young families. So there's a little bit of a bubble there. So I was curious to see the temperature of the town is, do you feel the town supports the Board of Education overall? What do you say?
I feel that. I
Great.
think anytime you're dealing with education and a system as large as ours, there are going to be differences, and differences are healthy. Conflict can be very healthy, and I think that overall we're very well supported by the community. Tremendously so, a lot more than a lot of districts that you'd see. I think we do have a healthy amount of people who have concerns that are extremely valid and that are appreciated and that are considered. And I think that's part of having community involvement, and it's a good thing. But I think overall, I think that the board is well supported, and I would hope the community feels that.
And you can judge that by the volunteerism that people, you can give for Don Cal and the treasurer, people give all 3.
Submitted to be on here. We have more committees, more community representatives on our committees than we've ever had before. Some members don't even necessarily have children involved in the committees they're working on. And they're just very interested in lending their expertise. And the amount of expertise we have in this town is tremendous. And one thing that we talked a lot about that when I first came on the board, we talked about we have so much expertise at our fingertips, like, getting people involved, and people do want to contribute. And I think it's turned out wonderful. I was saying, I don't know if you know Sapnitz Sashai, am I pronouncing his last name right? Well, he posted on Facebook today that he was doing a STEM class at the middle school.
Mhm.
And we've had, great members from the community who are willing to pitch in and teach classes at the STEM classes at the middle school. And our students benefit, the community benefits, the district benefits. So I think there's a lot of support, and I think it's important, and it's really ingrained in our culture, which is amazing. And I think it's a really good model for the students, because the students see so much involvement of community members, and you would hope that that's going to then impart on them. That's the way you live your life. You live your life as a community, and that there isn't this separation between the outside community and the school. And we were talking about the ninth graders are doing a project now to write memoirs with seniors from Senior Center, and that's a perfect example of just getting support and community members that are involved, where they of course don't have children in the school, but it's that opportunity for to be cross-generational as a school district. So I think it's I feel like it's pretty strong right now.
Yeah, I have young kids too. I mean, they're now 9 and 6, getting older every day. It's crazy to say I'm now 9 and 6, but they were 3 and 6. So when I moved to the town, I could count the number of people I knew on one hand, and yet I ran for the Board of Education. I had countless people taking me in and hosting gatherings, whether it was a coffee, a cocktail. Adam's not here, but I mean, I was running into him everywhere. He knew everybody. Yes, it's just that kind of community, where everybody's supportive, everybody, has an opinion, but people are generally respectful. And so, my experience here, especially given my background and coming from somewhere where I didn't know anybody in the town, I'd say it's a tremendous community that's very supportive. Strong opinions, and you should, because you called out before, it's emotional.
Yeah.
When you're talking about your children, but I think the whole community is very supportive.
I just feel like it's a good community. Like, obviously I talk a lot about the moving to the township because of the schools, but just very accepting. It's just a welcoming town. I can't stress that enough. And it's just I think at the end, like I said, I always believe people are good for the most part, and I think this town's full of them. So it's great to hear the level of participation.
Yeah, it is. And I have to give a lot of shout out, I guess, to our administration and our faculty, because I do feel like they're always looking for ways to involve the community.
Right.
And it's wonderful when you have it on both ends. So you have people looking for the opportunity to bring the community in, and you have the community that's really eager to serve. So it's really a good match.
It's great.
So thank you.
Well, and thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for coming in.
But thank you for your time, just besides, not only tonight, but.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Very nice to meet you all.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was a hot seat.
Okay, I'll open the public. Yeah, I'm gonna open the public comments. Okay, I'm gonna open the floor for public comments. If anyone would like to make a comment?
Are we going into executive
We
session?
are, moved to go into executive session to discuss, board interviews.
Second.
Okay, Dave, Heather,